Welcome to the Art of Becoming Whole, where we explore the edges of the human experience from the therapy room to the meditation cushion and beyond. My name is Kevin Stansbury. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in California and uh, holistic intuitive psychotherapist. Or intuitive. Do I say intuitive holistic or holistic intuitive? I don't remember. One of those.
And I'm Justin. I'm a certified hypnotist in Texas. I have a master's now in clinical mental health counseling and working to get licensure as an associate.
Congratulations,
Thanks.
master.
Hilarious.
So it's I where I feel pulled is connected to what we were just talking about is like how do we know what realism is? Because I hear some people talk about that like they say I'm a realist. But a lot of times people say that and there's like a pessimistic thing in there. It's like as if reality is inherently there's something inherently negative or pessimistic about it. And so to be a realist is, I mean, you gotta, I don't know, feel kind of bad about life or something. Uh, and, but then, like I said, everyone thinks they're a realist. So you could be an optimist and think you're a realist, or a pessimist and think you're a realist. So what is actually realism?
Well,
And
I
then
guess
maybe,
I never really heard it expressed as realism because I feel like there's different definitions of realism. Like, isn't realism also some kind of an art expression, or perhaps even a moral framework, perhaps. I'm not, you know. So I guess like what makes a realist realist, right? How do we know if the realist is actually accurately describing reality? Because yeah, you could be an optimist, or you could be a pessimist, or something in between.
yeah.
Um, that's a great question. And as with most a answers, it's going to be very complicated and nuanced. And well, I think for one, let's just say that the fact that everyone thinks that they're a realist, whether they're optimistic or pessimistic, says a lot about how much our attitude determines our perception of reality and how much the meaning we put on things uh, influences our perception.
Mm, yeah.
But I mean, it's a difficult question because you don't want to go into, you don't want to head in the clouds. You're in total denial, right? You're not grounded in reality, so to speak. Um, but you don't want to be so much of a realist that you are just a an Eeyore. What do you call it? Negative Nancy, right? Yeah, it's a difficult question.
And then, you know, at some point, God or the divine factors in and maybe contributes to a potential sense of optimism, maybe even a potential sense of pessimism, depending on your view of God. Um, and so somehow that factors in too, because I mean, if we're talking about this is this is a perceptual framework for all of reality. So we have to address the absolute.
Yeah. Um, I had several thoughts even uh, uh prior to that, or perhaps it's still related, right? So the thing is, you can be optimistic about one thing and not another, right? So you could say, in order to be a realist in a particular thing, you can consult the facts as it pertains to the experts in a particular field. I don't. I'm hoping that is still related, right? So like, if you were to start a business and you were saying I'm a realist, you might want to consult people who have expertise in business. They've produced a successful business or they helped other people produce a successful business. And so then they can um, give reliable advice, right? And say, this is what is realistic. But I think what you do with that data determines what you do with the data is is the meaning that you know your meaning, your spin on that thing.
Mhm.
So where was I even going with that? There's another thing I was going to go to, but we can go back to the God touching the ultimate, right?
Mm.
Actually, I don't know if I have uh thoughts on how God factors in whether or not you're a realist. I think you can be a realist whether you believe in God or not. But I will say there are probably a lot of studies that show that had positive psychological benefits when it comes to spirituality or even religion, right? Even I have to admit that there's sociological studies. If you were to, narrowly define specific factors in which it is beneficial, then yeah, you have benefits in religion. Um, so yeah, that's what I would say. There's definitely sociological, psychological studies to support if you want to be more of an optimist, then chances are if you believe in God or have some kind of tradition, a spiritual religious tradition, then that's going to support you in that.
What's interesting to me is that, I mean, I guess this is where there's some split between uh, Eastern philosophy and Western philosophy. And so a lot of times when people are talking about, well, these conversations are happening in the West, as far as I know, that talking about pessimism, optimism, and realism. That's like it's I'm assuming also comes out of some Western philosophy. I don't know who talked about it, if it was Kant or Kierkegaard or any of those people, but they probably talked about it.
Good question. I don't know. I really just have no idea if this was a conversation.
I think it was. I have vague memories of that. But either way, it's still about um in a way about belief. And so it's about thought. It's like how do you think about things? But in Eastern philosophy and practice, it's more about how are things when you stop thinking about them, and that's what's real.
So I guess we're uh, part of me wants to say maybe we're conflating terms, or maybe this is simply just a springboard for a conversation, right?
Mm.
Because I guess like when people say you're a realist or I'm a realist, I think what they mean is I face reality as it is, right? I'm not overly optimistic. I'm not overly pessimistic. I am real. I'm not fake about or in denial about what things uh, should be or are, right?
Mhm.
But then I think what we're touching on is a slightly different topic is how do you know what is the ultimate reality, which I'm sure many philosophical, theological, spiritual traditions are all trying to answer in their own way. And then you brought up a really amazing distinction about, well, the West probably mires itself in the conversation of you can be an optimist in this way, or this is pessimism and this is bad and this is realistic, right? Or this is the nature of things. It's all about thought. We can think our way through or to ultimate reality. We can kind of do armchair philosophy, right?
Mhm.
Whereas I guess the East is a total shift in paradigm. No thought. Then you'll reach what is actually real. Um, all that to say, I don't know. I have a stopping point here, so I was just like, I don't know where I was going with that.
An-
Um,
Answer it, Justin.
yeah, I don't even know what the question was. Uh, yeah, it's like how. Okay, I guess maybe what you're asking is how do we get to ultimate reality? How do we ascertain reality?
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I think in the East they also do a lot of thinking too. I mean, they have so many sutras and all the things, um but an there is a different emphasis on practice, at least in certain uh I don't know if it's just sects or certain points of view that are about yeah, not thinking. And while I love this discussion and we could go all the way to, you know, as abstract as you can get about this stuff, which I think we like to do. I'm also talking about it because to me it's a very practical thing and it's applicable to the process of healing and how do you view yourself accurately and how do you view the world accurately and that those that it makes a difference. And if
Hmm.
you think you're a realist, but you're actually a pessimist, it's like, well, no, I just know that I'm not good enough. And it's like, okay, so you're saying that's realism, but then it's like it's colored by a story that you just take as fact.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe what I'm actually saying in a much simpler way is how do we distinguish between stories that we tell about things and the actual facts of things?
I don't know if you can fully. I think we're always having some kind of narrative of some kind of story, whether it's our own story, it's our family story, it's our religion's story, it's the story of society, it's the story of our subculture, um, the story that social media or the legacy media or whatever media is telling. So in a way in a way you can't stop telling stories. Um, but if we were to kind of get a little bit more practical and personal, you have to feel into whatever it is that you're telling yourself. Because every story, or at least um, embedded stories, what I mean by that is, like, I guess cognitive behavioral therapy would use language like core belief, right? A belief that's very embedded into who you are, right? That kind of runs, which other beliefs come from, right? Um, if you feel into these beliefs, very yeah, like beliefs that have been running your life, beliefs that have been there from childhood, and you feel the energy of them. Then you can ascertain whether or not this is something that is real, or sorry, not real, but something that is realistic, that you're being realistic about, or you're being pessimistic about. So, for example, I'll give it a personal example that's been recent. You know, obviously, I'm very much I can be analytical, right?
You?
Yeah, yeah. In bioenergetics, I would be the more rigid type, which which means I have a lot of defenses and thinking, and I do a lot of that uh, intellectualizing type of defense. So, and sometimes that's good, right? In certain contexts, that's great. But, I think that I've realized that some of the questions I ask, or some of the intellectualizing and the analyzing, or me being skeptical, or me questioning, being critical, is actually from a lower vibration, is actually from an energy of doubt or skepticism. It's an actual energy. And with the energy, there's always going to be assumptions or beliefs that are adjacent to or underlying that thing. So the only way to figure that out is if one, somebody can point that out to you, right? A therapist, practitioner, healer, whoever, an analyst, or you do some self-inquiry and you feel into it. And generally speaking, a pessimistic energy will be heavier. It'll feel lower. It'll feel like you're kind of being dragged down or closed. These are all signs of something that is lower vibration, if you will, negative. And we just have to be mindful of that. It's not that critical thinking is bad. It's not. It's necessary. It depends on the energy in which you are coming from. So that's what I would say.
Hmm. So so it's more like feeling into the effects of your perceptual lens and the energy behind it, that there is a felt sense of, for example, if you are being pessimistic, you could actually get in touch with like the weight of it, or that it's somehow it feels heavy and like it closes you and drags you down and potentially even makes you less functional in your life, or less effective in functioning.
It can, right? Yeah, function depends on the context. It could be causing you distress. Yeah, for sure. Now, this is predicated on one, that you are able to catch yourself in the moment, that you are able to create awareness or raise your awareness in that moment to then actually feel into that thing, right? But then step two is, yeah, and this might take some work for some people, right? It took a lot of work for me. Some people are more natural at it, right? They can just kind of feel into it things. Some people not so much. So that the second step would be either having or developing or acquiring the skill to then feel that energy or feel that belief,
Mm.
to ascertain it accurately.
So it's important to be able to feel it, like
A hundred percent.
not
Yeah.
just think about it.
Oh yeah. If you just think about it, then you are lost.
Mm.
You. It's not to say that you couldn't get accurate information about things by thinking. You could, but you're missing most of the pie. And uh you also subject yourself to the trap of getting lost in the intellectual.
And it's interesting because in and maybe this is a Western thing again, but it's like, you know, typically I think people separate they make this distinction between thinking and feeling, and that thinking, rational thought is often viewed as superior to feeling because we know that feelings can be well, false. That you can have a feeling about something, you feel one way about it, it's not reflective of the truth. And so then people think that thought would be more reflective of the truth. But I think maybe what you're getting at is that feelings often drive thoughts.
Yeah, I wasn't even getting to that, but yes, 100%. Yeah, yeah. I think that we underestimate just how much feelings drive thoughts and
Hmm.
how little that we actually know ourselves. So it's so interesting how, okay, so there have been studies done, right, where you have Republican, Democrat, or you have two opposing sides. And what do these studies show? Okay, if I'm not mistaken about how the study was done, if I'm being accurate here. So they actually like gave like counter arguments to whatever their position was. Now you would think that like, hey, if you're rational, you're open to reason, if you see the defeater to your argument, then you'll think about it and be like, okay, I was wrong, right? Let me change my position. But what ended up happening in these studies is that actually further cements their their side. They're actually further cement. They dig their heels in even deeper and say, no, 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 I'm like for sure right, right. Um, yeah, which is it's just so interesting. Uh, there's a book that I will need to finish it, and you probably heard of it, and people listening to this probably have heard of it. It's called The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. He's a social psychologist. He's written many books, but it's a great. I mean, it's an amazing book on not only moral psychology, but kind of like why is it that conservatives don't understand liberals and liberals don't understand conservatives? It's I'll need to reread it, but yeah.
Yeah.
What were we originally talking about?
Realism, pessimism, optimism, all that
Like
stuff.
right after that.
Oh.
Oh, okay. You were asking me about uh you were pointing out that it's our feelings that drive thoughts.
Hmm.
And I think that's largely correct. We like to think of us as rational creatures, but we're really creatures of feeling, and then the rationalization comes after.
Yeah. And it's a little bit hard to track, but it seems like generally we could probably say that the feeling comes first, and then the core belief forms around the feeling, and then like reinforces the feeling.
I don't know.
And I don't know if that's true like once you're an adult, if you're forming new core beliefs or something. But as far as like developmental psychology, it's like the feeling is going to come first. So that you're a little kid, you're going to have the emotional experience of something, and tied to that, like your identity starts to form around the emotional experience, which so it's then formed out, like the core beliefs come out of the feeling. Because if you're so young, you can't even form beliefs.
Yeah, fair, fair.
But yeah, as we get older, then it gets more murky. It's like, yeah, I don't know. Then something could happen in thought first, and then that generates a feeling, and then they just reinforce each other. It's kind of messy.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure, honestly.
But the main point, I think, of what you were saying is that um, a lot of people think that they're good at critical thinking, but I think most people are not actually very good at it.
That our conversation is kind of sparking something I'm thinking about because if we are emotional creatures and then we rationalize our feelings, then in order to be as objective as possible, I mean, obviously we can't be 100% objective. We're always going to have some kind of bias. But part of good critical thinking then is making sure that we are emotionally kind of clear, or at least we're aware of our feelings toward a thing or our biases and factoring that in at the very least.
Yeah.
So, interestingly enough, right, psychotherapy can be a what do you call it? An adjunct, right? A supplement, or even maybe it's even a primary to critical thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think in some way it's like you can't actually be good at critical thinking unless you are aware of your own emotional reactions. It's a yeah, those two things go hand in hand. So then being in therapy is largely, or at least a lot of times, about increasing your awareness of your own emotions and why you react the way you react in certain situations. And so then, yeah, once you know that, then you can see it play out in real time and you can catch yourself before, hmm, I don't know, before making up your mind about something. And I guess this is where the Eastern part factors in for me is I think what you said earlier is true. It's that we can't stop telling stories. That's just like what happens. It's just what humans do. It's how the mind works. And this is good meditation teachers will say this that you you can work on stopping thought if you want to. Like you can work on concentration meditation and get really good at staying right here without thoughts coming in. Like it is something you can work on, but that uh, a lot of times people think that's the point of meditation, but it doesn't have to be. And for meditations that are just about whether it's mindfulness or like Zazen, where it's about experiencing the true nature of reality. Uh, you don't have to control thought. You don't have to stop it. It's an ongoing stream, and it'll just keep going. And sometimes it'll slow down, and sometimes it'll stop, and then it'll come back. And so it's kind of like that, like the stories that we tell. Sometimes we tell a lot of stories, sometimes if less less stories. Sometimes the stories do stop but only temporarily, and then it comes back. But through meditation, it becomes really clear that while you can't stop the stream of thought, you can't stop the stream of emotion, you can't stop the stream of sensation, but you can take a step back from it, and you can see it happening. And if you can do that, then you can, I think, you can have a more realistic view of what's happening because then you can actually see your perceptual lens playing out in real time. and call yourself out on it.
I was going to say something similar. Yeah. Sometimes the way I describe meditation or mindfulness is that it allows you to be a little bit more objective about what you're thinking, feeling, and experiencing.
Yeah.
Uh, you're able to analyze a thing without judging it. Maybe analyzing is the wrong word, but perceive a thing. There was a thing that we did in when I was in campus ministry. We would obviously have Bible studies, and the way that we would do these Bible studies is called inductive Bible study. And there would be like a couple of phases to this. But the first phase, you would take a manuscript, just like a page or whatever passage you're wanting to analyze and understand. In the first phase, you would do your best to not bring in any of your prior understandings, your theological commitments. You do your best, but obviously we were evangelical, but you do your best not to bring in all these biases or other parts of the Bible even. And you just look at the text for what the text says. And then you would just note different details in the text. So maybe you would say, "Oh, Jesus was mentioned 5 times," right? Like that would be a detail.
Mm.
Oh, it looks like there's a theme of, I don't know, righteousness. Blah 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 blah, so on and so forth. You just note details. That's it. You don't put any kind of theological understanding to it. You're just noting what does the text say. And I liken that to meditation, or what meditation can do.
Mm.
Because in meditation, you are just noting exactly what's happening. You're not giving any kind of judgment, any kind of value. You're not bringing any kind of baggage or, anything like that. You're just observing it for what it is. I find it to be an okay analogy, at least from my personal experience. Obviously, I don't really do inductive Bible study anymore, but that can be an analogy.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean it sounds similar in that it's creating a little bit of space between your own interpretations and the thing. And so it actually is it's a cool practice to do however you do it, just to be able um, to create that space to see it. I mean, one of my favorite forms of this over the years has just been to get to know my own reactivity. And so if I'm scrolling or reading news articles or something, and I can see it happen. I mean, it's pretty obvious to me at this point where a particular view is presented, and then I have the emotional reaction that to me is indicative of I'm identified with a particular position, and I am unconsciously, automatically in defense of it, which tells me I am not at a neutral starting point with whatever this is. And potentially I can't be trusted.
Well, it's not always the case that because if you have an emotional reaction to something, that means you are not accurately perceiving that thing. Sometimes that is the case that you are both telling the truth about something and having an emotional reaction. Sometimes.
Yes.
And I forgot what I was going to say. So,
Oh. Yeah, and I think maybe it's important to make a distinction between, because like just the words emotional reactivity, it makes it sound a particular way. But in my training, this would be coming from Tibetan Buddhism, emotional reactivity is a different thing than an emotional reaction. To me, I actually don't know if Tibetan teachers would agree with me saying this, but just that to me, like I can have an emotion and it cannot be reactive. Or I can have an emotion and it can be reactive. If it's reactive, again, that means that I'm strongly identified with something and then in defense of it. If it's non-reactive, I might just be having what I would call a raw and reasonable emotional reaction to reality.
Interesting.
And oh my God, I think that this is such an important distinction today because a lot of people conflate the two, and even a lot of therapists, they're in defense of their own emotional reactivity and saying that no, basically they're saying no, you should be emotionally reactive because of this horrible thing or that horrible thing going on.
And if
And
you're
it's
not, then you are a bigot or immoral or, you know, XYZ. Fill in
yeah.
the label.
Yeah, you're certainly not on the right moral page, or the right team or whatever. But to me, it's like no, like you can have deep and profound emotions about things that are happening in the world. Um, and it's kind of hard actually to describe what the difference is, but I feel it in myself. The difference to me is reactivity is a fight or flight response. It's like and it's overactive. It feels overactive. And I can in my own body I can feel it. It's like I get sucked into loops. If you get sucked into distressing thought loops about it, then you're suffering. And it's not to me that's not clear seeing of what is, and that's not it's also not even fully allowing the emotion if you're just kind of like looping in distress. That's not the same as feeling something all the way through and being in acceptance of it.
You mind if I kind of change the topic a little bit?
Sure.
Kind of piggybacking off of seeing what is real. I don't know if, I mean, I would bet that meditation teachers would not word it like this at all. Or, or so I'm very influenced by new thought teachers, in particular mystics, kind of more modern mystics, if you will. And they say that they say that you should see everything as the perfection of God, essentially, if I were to boil it down, right? Baptize everything, bless everything. It doesn't matter if it's negative, positive, whatever it is. See it as the perfection of God, and you send love and you bless it and whatever it is, right? Until that you are convinced yourself that you're seeing that. I don't know that's in line with what you think that or your definition or perhaps the Tibetan Zen whatever meditation teacher would say accurate seeing it would be, like seeing what is that in line with what they might say? Or
I don't know. Uh, yeah, I'm not totally sure. It's a part of me wants to say yeah, but another part wants to disagree.
right,
Uh,
right.
so yeah, I don't know. There's something to that in that I think that when you quote unquote experience oneness, or the dissolution of the separate self, the egoic identity, it either falls away or just gets enfolded by the greater wholeness of everything, which I would call God, um, then yes, then there's the knowing of the perfection of everything. And that's a thing. That's a thing. But that doesn't exclude the human reality of horrible suffering. It's not to say that horrible suffering is um a wonderful thing, like, or it's just a beautiful part of God, like it's not that, but I do think it's not separate from it because nothing is separate.
So in this context, suffering is not separate from God. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So this is where I start to blend, I guess, the more my Zen and Tibetan Buddhism background with maybe this would be more would you say new thought?
Yeah, new thought.
New thought or new age stuff or whatever, but that I like this framing, which is that it's not that the language do it doesn't capture it quite right here, but it's not that well, one, it's not that God is just like a singular intelligence just floating there and making decisions about whether people suffer or not. So there's that, but also that suffering, and when I say suffering right now, at least, I'm talking about horrible violence that humans do to other humans. That is not part of the divine will. That is a human creation, and that we have choice in the matter. And so I hold, I guess it's a paradoxical view that everything is still one. So technically it is a part of God. It is a manifestation of the divine because everything is. There is nothing separate from that. But that doesn't mean that it's perfect the way it is. It's
Right.
like it
Right.
kind of it kind of is perfect the way it is, but it also totally isn't. And I guess that we're talking about, or I'm talking about relative and absolute. That from an absolute perspective, sure, everything's perfect. From a relative perspective, of course it's not.
And by relative, you mean from like a human standpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I think some of the new thought teachers would say that, what would they say? What was I going with this? That evil, I think they would say that it's illusory, or it's a manifestation of something unresolved within me. That is why it's showing up. And so once you see the perfection in it, not that that thing is good in itself, but that it actually is a an illusion of sorts. Like fear would be an illusion. It's not, it doesn't actually, in the absolute sense of things, doesn't have true power, right? It's like the truth is like love and abundance, blah blah blah. And yeah, all the sunshine and rainbows, and you know, uh, yeah, yeah. Anyways, I'm not sure where I was going with that. I guess just mainly just to kind of maybe make the connection here.
My favorite presentation of that stuff, it comes from Paul Selig's work and his guides. They talk about they they have their own language for it. But it's I guess some people might say it's like seeing things through the lens of a higher vibration. That's one way of putting it. They call it the upper room. They talk about like going to the upper room and seeing
Do
things from there.
do they really call it that?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
What is
No,
that?
it's funny because no, so in the book of Acts, there's this the upper room is where the apostles prayed and the Holy Spirit came down and so there's actually a huge ministry, like a church in Dallas called the Upper Room, and like it's actually like very popular, and they stream worship music and everything. So,
Oh, okay.
anyways, so I just kind of thought it was funny when you said that. But go on.
Well, they use a lot of Christian terminology in their stuff. But anyway, there's just something about they before they started using that term, they would say see through the eyes of the Christ. Again, Christian terminology, but it's like to the actually um, you can lift something by seeing it in a particular way. Like you can change the vibration of something by, well, in essence, you're changing your own vibration and seeing it through the eyes of the Christ or from this higher vantage point where you actually see the full, complete truth of the thing, which means the divinity of it as well. And
Yeah.
that through doing that, and this is why I actually love this, um, is that also through doing that, it disengages from the it's like the matrix of suffering, which is all about fighting. It's all about conflict. And so like what the normal stance people take is if something horrible is going on, then you have to like fight against it. And but then in the fighting against it, there's something that happens energetically where you're giving that thing power. And you're buying into the illusion that this thing is a powerful, scary thing that needs to be fought against instead of maybe depends on the thing, I guess, but instead of seeing it as an illusion, that it's like it's the illusion of power. It's the illusion that it's a scary thing or whatever, but it's actually just these people that are so separate from the divine. They've separated themselves so thoroughly, and then they believe in their own delusions about it, their own illusory reality. And then you go into agreement with that, thinking that you have to wage some battle against it. And it just keeps feeding the same cycle. So it's like removing the food from this cycle by seeing it clearly for what it is. I love that. And to me, that just like it rings so true and has helped me immensely with viewing suffering in the world, for example.
Interesting. I didn't even really think to like link it to world events.
Mm.
I guess when I think about non-resistance, I think more of how I'm being resistant or non-resistant personally. But I hadn't thought about applying it to world events. So would it be that I apply the non-resistance, I become non-resistant or non-reactive to the world event from my vantage point, and then so I change my emotional relationship to it. Is that what you mean when you're, I guess when you're talking about world events?
Kinda. Yeah. I mean, again, you can have an emotion about something. So it's not about eliminating the emotion necessarily, but it's a I guess the simplest way I could put it is it's a the process of recognizing when you are fueling the experience of separation, which we do either by othering or uh, well, I guess that would be it. We do that by othering, by being like, okay, well, these people are the evil ones, and they're doing these horrible things, and we need to stop them. And on the surface, I don't disagree with that statement. It's like, yeah, they, we probably need to stop these people. But then it gets into, yeah, the emotional relationship to that process. And like, I guess within myself, I can feel the difference between I'm remembering, I don't know, something, just an emotional reactivity that I had towards something, and it's like I need to, the feeling is like urgent. I urgently need to convince people that this is true. And there's like like my whole body gets tense around it, and it doesn't, it feels distressing. It's like I'm in distress about it. And then my whole identity gets wrapped up in it. And then I feel like because my identity's wrapped up in it, I've got to fight for something. And that's illusion. That's the illusion. And that there's a way of having pretty much the exact same experience, except for you're not buying into your identity around it, which makes all the world of difference.
which I guess makes it at paradoxically a completely different experience.
Yeah. Yeah. But the words might be similar. Again, it's like I think ideally, if we're talking about, let's just say child predators or something, um, that we should figure out how to stop super wealthy and powerful individuals from engaging in predatory shit with kids and child sex trafficking and stuff like that. We should stop that. And that's true. I'm 100% behind that. Uh, but I've had two different types of experiences around that. One where I feel the contraction, I feel the fear around it, I feel helplessness, powerlessness. How do I even stop these people? And how do I convince other people even just to recognize that this is a thing that's happening? And there's like a lot of tension and stress in the system around that. Or there's the other side of the experience where hmm, it's hard to define it. Where I have an intuitive sense that if I just open myself to truth, if I just open myself to the truth of this moment and reality, that truth doesn't need defending. And I will be naturally guided to do what I can do and what's within my power to contribute to the world changing in the direction that I want it to change. And that makes it all so much more, I guess, like to me it feels more practically well, it's just empowering. It's just like, okay, so I can just do what's true for me right now, and that's going to contribute to the undoing of this illusion in the world. And that's not a grandiose thing. It's not like, and I will rise as the savior. It's just like I'm just going to do my part. I don't know how big my part will be. I don't know exactly what it will be, but that there's this deeper wisdom and intelligence that moves me and that I can let go into that. And so I can still feel empathy and pain and um, anger about these things. But I don't get like my identity doesn't get wrapped up in that.
There's a trust and a radical acceptance. You know, I think this kind of touches in one of the myths about radical acceptance. I think there's a myth that like if you accept something, that means you don't change anything, or you're not going to take action, or you shouldn't take action. You shouldn't change anything. And maybe sometimes that's the case, but you can radically accept and be in the energy of trust and still work to change things. It's not like you don't do anything. Hopefully I'm making sense here. If you need clarification. Okay.
No, you're making sense. Yeah, that you, yeah, I think a lot of people, upon first hearing the word acceptance and then maybe radical acceptance, that they're like, okay, so you just like become passive, just passively accept things. And nope. No. To me, it's I guess what fits into the radical acceptance piece is like what makes you feel empowered? Like what's empowering versus what's disempowering. And if it's empowering, generally speaking, when I think about real empowerment, it's realism. It's not like it's not based on a delusion, because if it's based on a delusion, it has a shelf life. Like it might be empowering for a while. Some people can stretch out delusion for their whole lives and you know and maybe it'll be somewhat empowering. But 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 to me, I think of it more as like what really makes you be way more in touch with yourself, with life, a deeper intimacy, a deeper attunement to what's real and true, and makes you feel like you are capable of navigating this, and that that is real. If it works, if it makes you more capable of navigating life, then that means it's realism. And if it makes you less capable, then it's something else. So yeah, radical acceptance includes, well, it's radical. It includes everything. So it's it includes your desire to act if it's there.
So how does that relate to discipline, productivity, getting things done?
Oh yeah. Hold on, let me go pee.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, how does it relate to discipline? How does all this relate to discipline? I mean, I guess we're talking about maybe taking a realistic approach with yourself, as far as getting things done. Um, and what we've outlined two differing but sort of adjacent types of realism, which would be I would say more like I guess thought-based realism or uh, yeah, like a perceptual framework based on how you think about things. And then this other realism that's letting go of thought and just seeing things as they are without interpretation or outside of interpretation. Is that fair? Did I do it justice?
So I might have missed that. So sorry, the second part is letting go of thought. So then what happens?
Letting go of thought, and then so that you can experience the moment outside of a thought-based interpretation
Okay, okay. Yeah.
as much as is humanly possible. And so what I see is that almost everyone that's talking about motivation or discipline, they're talking about the one form, that one form which is based on thought. And I would say it's like a thought-based control of life. And so you're evaluating on a level of thinking, you're making judgments and evaluating about your life, what you should, often shoulds get involved, what you should be doing, how you should be doing it, how consistent you should be with it, um, all that stuff. And it's that people are trying to distill a formula for how to approach yourself so that you can be effective in getting stuff done.
Yeah.
Yeah, which sounds fine. That sounds fine to me. Um, Wanting to be effective in getting stuff done is that sounds great. Uh, Also, something you had mentioned earlier, it's like if you, for example, want to be effective in a business, then you would turn to people who have been effective in business, and then you can emulate what they've done, or you can learn from them to hopefully apply either the same or similar formula, which will produce the same results for you. And all of this, there's nothing wrong with any of this on the surface. But it bothers me still. And maybe for a long time it bothered me because it didn't work for me. And then I'm like, what's wrong with me? Because everyone's saying this is how you do it. So why doesn't it work then? And my conclusion would typically just be like, oh, well, it's because I suck. There's something broken about me. I just need to fix that thing, and then I should be able to do this. But over time, I started to see that was an inaccurate conclusion, and that it might be a typology thing. I would argue that for most people, that approach isn't going to work. And that is what I see in the world. Most people struggle with that sort of thing, even just looking at one thing, dieting and exercise. It's like most people struggle with that. And so clearly, that one approach of, well, you just have to know cognitively in your mind, you just have to know what to do. And then you just remain consistent with that. Just force yourself to do it no matter how you feel. And then you'll get the results.
Well, there are more sophisticated ways of saying that, right? And I do think there are practical behavioral interventions that can help. So like people would say, well, you need accountability, right? You need systems in place so that you got to make it easy on yourself so that you can create the good habit And if you do that enough, right, then it'll just be automatic.
Yeah. Yeah, and I hate all that.
All of it?
So, I will admit this is me stepping outside my own perceptual framework that I've got a bias here. But I'm also basing that bias off of years of my own lived experience and working with people who struggle with this sort of thing. And this is kind of an aside, but what you were saying, it reminds me of what I see all over the place on social media these days, which is like either neuroscientists or people interested in neuroscience saying, well, yeah, but we've done this study and this is what we understand about the brain, and you just have to do this, this, and this, and then you get your brain to change and you've implemented the new habit, and now you're a different person. Good job. And I'm not throwing that out the window. I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. I think there's some truth in that, but I don't think it's like, I don't think it's as true as they think it is. And personally, I I like cringe. I cringe at there's certain words that coaches use like accountability.
That's a big
Uh,
one.
yeah, that it just makes me cringe now because it's it's not going to be every time, but I'm just going to say it anyway. Every time I hear it, to me, it sounds like just push through. Like whether it's you or it's someone else, accountability just means someone else to help you forcefully push your way through whatever the block is. And so it's about force. And I just think that there's another way of being that is a much better option and can facilitate a much better long-term relationship with yourself and your own experience that decreases or potentially completely eliminates inner conflict. And then you don't you don't need accountability. You just need to be attuned to yourself.
That's interesting. I have a similar view. I don't throw everything out. I don't think I'm as averted to the mind-based discipline as you are.
Mhm.
Um, I was gonna ask, like, what do you think about a combination of the two? Is
Yeah,
that possible?
yeah, I'm not completely against that idea. I just think that I'm thinking about myself, my own life. It's not it's not that I think that I don't know, like some weird idea that we don't establish habits or something, or like you can just forget about habits and forget about consistency. If you want to get good at guitar, you just like trust the wind and then you'll just like start shredding.
YOLO.
It's no, like you have to practice. I do recognize the lived reality of in order to build something, you do have to have consistency. So I'm not arguing against that. I'm arguing against a more foundational way of being that drives that process. And that I think you can either come from a place where you're reinforcing inner conflict and then you're setting this thing up, which I hear people say the actual words that you just have to like fight a battle with yourself every day. Just battle
Yeah.
that bitch part of your mind that comes up and says, I want to stay in bed, and you just gotta fucking battle that shit.
It's Goggins that shit, man.
Yeah. Wage war against it. I'm a fucking warrior.
Right, right.
And to me, that's an illusion. That's not real.
Well, okay, I see what you're saying. I guess I'm coming from a different perspective, right? So I'm thinking, yeah, that reveals exactly how you live your life and exactly what your framework of how you relate to life. Life is a war.
Uh,
And so
it-
that's very real to you if you use those that type of metaphor in those words.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think it's real to them. Like so on a relative level, it's real. But I think on a more fundamental level, it's it is illusory, and it causes them suffering. It might also, depending on who they are, work for them, and they might be very successful. They might be more successful than me in terms of whatever measures you want to use, money or fame or whatever. But in terms of their self relationship, that's that's what's important to me. So I was saying to you the other day that maybe the only person I've ever heard talk about this that I agreed with was Krishnamurti. And he was saying something about the interviewer was talking to him about this and some saying like, yeah, well, but we need to apply elbow grease, right? Like we need to put our nose to the grindstone and like work shit out, just put in effort. We need effort. And Krishnamurti's like, well, let's just look at taking a walk. Like if I want to take a walk and I go take a walk, there's no effort. It's like he didn't say this, I'm paraphrasing now, but it's a complete alignment. It's wholeness. There's not it's the integrated experience of a self where you want to do something and then you do the thing. There's no inner conflict about it. So it's more like my curiosity for myself, and this is something that I'm still discovering. I wouldn't say I've fully, I don't know, become fully realized in this particular area, but I do see the movement happening, and it is in the direction of dismantling the inner conflict, and then everything gets easier, and then I just do what I want to do, and the things I don't do, I'm not upset that I'm not doing them.
Yeah. I have a perspective as a hypnotist.
Please.
Yeah. So a lot of the things you're saying I'm quite resonating with. I will say this. For a subset of people, the mind-based discipline type of brute force it, that will work for some people. And in a certain context, I think that's appropriate. You're in the army, you got to do what you got to do. Uh, but for us civilians who want to live in the non-army life, right? Uh, yeah, there are different ways of doing things. Rather than framing things or conceptualizing things as in terms of behavior, I have to do X, Y. I have accountability, right? Or I have someone, uh, pushing me, holding me accountable. I have somebody giving me a punishment reward, right? Rather than thinking of punishments, rewards, and like behaviors, and I just do this X, Y, Z, start thinking in terms of states of consciousness or identity or beliefs. And what you're saying about inner conflict, that's a red flag for me. Uh, as in, not like a red flag, I mean a light bulb moment. Like I will immediately, okay, inner conflict. I know that's something completely unconscious. The problem's unconscious. 100%, 99.9% of the time. There are exceptions, but the problem's unconscious. And there are ways of, you could say, dismantling inner conflict, right? Resolving the inner conflict so that your belief supports you, your energy supports you, your identity supports you. You come more from a flow-based state. Uh, I remember, I don't like this guy who said it, but what he said was true, right? So he had a friend of his that was just a big runner, and the guy was trying to figure out how to exercise. So he asked his friend, who's the runner, he's like, so how do you do it? Like, how do you just like run all the time? And he's like, dude, that's simple. I'm a runner. It's just what I do. And so if you come from a more, I guess, flow based, you can say flow based, identity based, belief based. If you know how to influence your subconscious mind, and I know that you might not, I don't know how much you would agree with that framing or with that, uh, the types of techniques that I might use. Um, but from my perspective, if you can influence the subconscious mind, it is now, it can be an asset and not a liability in terms of the thing that you want to do. Now, however, the question becomes like, well, how do you do that? How do you actually resolve the inner conflict? And that's a little bit more of a detailed conversation. Obviously, you should see somebody that can help you navigate the inner conflict, right? But I think in previous episodes, I've talked about it's very important to to develop a relationship with your subconscious. Why would the subconscious listen to you if you've never listened to it? So that's probably like step one. And how do you do that? Well, you kind of have to feel your feelings. You kind of have to explore that a little bit. And the more you do that, the more you get in touch with the parts of yourself and you try to understand where they're coming from, the more they're going to trust you. And pretty soon, once you build that relationship, you can actually tell your subconscious mind to do things and it will do it. Not with everything. There might be specific things that you just have really deep resistance. Like I have certain things that I'm working on. Like my subconscious mind will definitely not listen to me try to force it to do this thing, right? Specific thing. So maybe like in that specific instance, I'll have to figure out what the resistance is, right? And work on clearing it, accepting it, blah, blah, blah. But by and large, the more you develop that relationship, it I know you don't like the analogy of a computer, but I think
Mm.
that the subconscious mind is both, it's strange. It's both personal and impersonal at the same time. And I think it can act like a computer of sorts or a an engine if you have the right relationship with it. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, that's all very interesting.
Is that slightly different from how you would conceptualize things?
Um, yeah, I'm not exactly sure how. I mean, I was listening and I was like, I was finding it interesting and understanding how that probably works for maybe even a lot of people, how it would work for a lot of people. But I was also thinking, I'm not sure that works for me and how I approach things. Or maybe there's just like a couple subtle differences. But the first one being that it to me feels still from this like top-down control of the mind.
Yeah,
This
yeah, you can. And I could see that. I could see that. I don't necessarily think that's always bad. Uh you can't, I mean you technically could force your subconscious mind to do things, but it doesn't respond well to that.
Mm.
So if you treat your subconscious mind more like a lover and you ask it nicely, it's more willing to do those things. Now, I don't know if you, again, would still push back and say that's still a top-down trying to control things. Um,
Hmm, maybe not necessarily. I
it,
mean,
yeah.
I think it depends. It probably depends. It's like so where I seem to get to a lot with clients is what's your priority here? If your priority is, as one person put it, oh, what was the word? It wasn't productivity, efficiency. Efficiency. If the priority is efficiency or productivity or just like getting this thing done, then to me, you're going to be trying to manipulate your unconscious, even if you're approaching it more softly. You could be approaching it like a lover, but it's like still so that I can get what I want from you, as opposed to the priority being actually establishing a caring and loving relationship.
I can see that. I think, yes, you can influence your subconscious mind through ego, and that will still work. So I do think that that is it's also a good thing to do the shadow work and figure out what your motivations are and all that, right? And get clear from that level. I can see what you're saying with that. You can start to kind of manipulate things. Um, but I don't know, but part of me would also push back and say it's not bad to have efficiency as a value.
Sure. I wouldn't say
And
that's
yeah, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I actually, yeah, so let's distinguish between there's a resource of maybe you could say flow-based efficiency versus a kind of a lower um, maybe fear-based, control-based efficiency. And maybe that's what we need to distinguish is which one is which.
yeah, perhaps. I guess I think every time I think of efficiency, I'm like, okay, so you're trying to be a robot. Productivity. Okay, so you're trying to be a robot. You're trying to be like a assembly line and just input the data and then churn out the results. And that's like you're making that. It's not just like it's fine as a value, I think, but it's like a core value that defines your worth. That to me, there's an issue with that. And that the goal for me needs to be attunement. It doesn't matter. The end result doesn't matter. It's not about like how much stuff you can get done in your life. It's how attuned are you to yourself. And that's actually what
I
decreases suffering.
I think it's both. So where was I going with this? What causes a lot of inner conflict or suffering is that if you have two opposing values within your subconscious, and that gets a little trickier.
Hmm.
Generally, if you can suss out the two parts that are at odds with one another and drill down on what they're trying to do. So this is just for example, right? If say part A, it's like, oh, why do you need to be efficient? I need to be efficient so that I can be successful. Why do you need to be successful? Well, I need to be successful so that I can finally be safe. Let's just say that, right? And then maybe like part B is like, well, I really value attunement. Well, like, why do you value attunement? Well, it's so that I can love myself and like, okay, and once you love yourself, you'll have, oh, well, then I'll just feel safe. This is just for example, right?
Yeah.
So
This is really co-
theoretically, huh?
it's really common, by the way. Like this that you're using, it's a good example, but just that often there are these seemingly opposing parts that basically at the end of, if you really drill down into it, they want the same thing, but they're just
Yes,
going about it in completely opposite ways.
exactly. 100%. Yes. And so if you're able to drill and get to the core either value or thing that they're trying to do for you, which is just generally the same, they want the same thing just in different ways, and you get them to communicate with each other, and you realize, oh yeah, they're just trying to do this same thing in different ways. And then you can have an integration, and now you have this resource state where I guess, I don't know, you don't have to call it efficiency, but like you're just way more integrated, and the things that you want to do, you do, and it's just way more natural, and you don't have that inner conflict anymore.
Yeah, I can agree with all that.
Okay, okay. So we're on the same page with that. Uh,
Uh,
I think.
yeah, I used to do a lot more of that kind of stuff with myself, like the conversation between parts. And I haven't done it in a little while. I would do it if I had someone, like I used to talk to a friend on the phone a lot, and we would kind of do that with each other. And I'm not like anti that, but mm, I don't know. I think my approach maybe, like to me, that's I'm arguing with myself. It could be, and I think I used it this way, like that's like more of a cognitive approach, where I'm looking at these two different perspectives within myself that are at odds with each other. And sure, there's some feelings in there too, and so I could feel the different feelings, and you know, so it's not strictly cognitive, but I think maybe what I do now is even more feeling based. And so it's even less about identifying the different parts exactly, and it's more like, I don't know, just that there's something there's something I need to feel here. And then I just like bring my full awareness to the state that I'm in. And well, let me get more specific, because with what we're talking about, with getting stuff done, like it still happens for me. There are certain things that I'd like to get done, or I say I'd like to get them done, and then I don't do them. And then I have some like maybe shame or judgment come up about it. And so it still happens. It happens a lot less, but it does happen. And so then there's something that I need to do for me. The How I would approach it is like I need to be with that part of me that, well, I guess it is the two different parts. There's the part that judges, and then there's the part that is judged. And but to me, they're the same thing. It's I just lump them into the inner child. They're just different parts of the inner child to me. And then it's just like, okay, well, let me just feel all that. And then I just feel all that. And then usually something softens, and then I open up into a deeper acceptance of where I'm at. And so one of the I guess one of the inner conflicts that I've had in all of this, in this discovery process, is is that it seems to me like there's some kind of a timing to things. It could be a timing like for my body, a timing for my emotional self, a timing for my soul, something, but some deeper rhythm, and that sometimes it's just not the time for something yet. And like something else needs to happen, and then at some point I'll just get there, and it will be the time for that. And that's not something I have control over. And so there's that, but then there's the other side that's like, okay, but how do I know when it's that or when it's that there's some block that can be addressed right now, and I'm just calling it timing, but then it's just going to be there 5 years from now.
Right. Right.
And that's a good question to hold.
Yeah, and I think this is a discovery process for all of us. I feel like I've dealt with a very similar type of I guess question, right? If is it just a timing thing or is it there's actually something there that needs to be addressed? Um, and sometimes there really is something that needs to be addressed, and I'm not seeing it in that moment. But I guess this goes back to yeah, this is a discovery process, and if a value of yours or ours is attunement, then there's a process of that. And sometimes you'll be more attuned, sometimes you'll be less. So it's a journey.
Hmm.
Could I could I share actually an example, personal example? Not necessarily about, well, I guess it is attunement, right? I guess you could say that in terms of getting things done. I'll do two, maybe. Maybe I'll do, well, let me share the first one. So I'm studying for the national counseling exam. And I noticed the other day I was really just trying to study, to focus, but I couldn't get myself to do it. Like every time I would look at the screen and study, like I would just feel angry. I just feel like, oh, I'm just pissed at this thing. So I stopped and asked why, right? And I can't remember exactly what the reason was. It was some BS reason, right? It was just like, oh, it's because of this. It's a waste of time. It's a whatever it is, right? And I try to, I know how to argue with myself in a way that I win, sort of, in a way that is beneficial for me, right? I can untie beliefs fairly quickly, depending on what it is. But so I'm like untying some of these beliefs, but I can sense I'm like, this is like surface level. I'm like, what am I really angry about? And as soon as I kind of step behind the anger, it was just this flash. It was like just like this subtle moment where I'm like, oh, there's like fear. Oh, that's strange. So then I feel behind the anger and there's this fear. And that was the real reason why I was having trouble studying. The belief there, the fear was, what if I get into this field and I find out that it's like I hate it, right? And I just wasted my life. And that was the deep fear that was holding me back from studying, or at least in that moment. I'm sure there's other things, right? But once I was able to feel that fear, and I guess you could say console or comfort that part of me, and then uh, obviously the fear subsided, the anger subsided, right? That specific resistance was gone, and I was able to be more neutral about studying.
That's a good example.
Yeah,
Having a half-finished thought. Um, so I mean, that's an example of a time when um, there's there is a block happening in the moment that can be addressed in the moment. And it's not like, oh, maybe it's a timing thing and I don't know, I just need to wait 2 months or something. Also, there is the practical reality of in life, sometimes we have to do something now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's deadlines with consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess I know that I maybe I don't know if this is exactly true, but maybe I can sound dogmatic about my approach or just like extra allergic to these other perspectives. And I think there's a reason for that, but also at the end of the day, for me, it's just about what works for you, for whoever. And so if it's really working, then cool. I just meet a lot of people who are trying these things that maybe work for other people, but they're just like hitting their head against this wall over and over and over. And and maybe for some of those people, it would work to just like um, maybe do kind of like what you said with this example, and that's addressing this one thing in this moment, working with that unconscious block that's there. And then, I see that as like pruning. It's like throughout your life, you're just going to encounter a lot of different moments like that, and then you could do a little pruning and you'll address a particular branch that's there, and that'll allow you to do the one behavior that you want to do right now. And I think the thing that I'm getting all worked up about is is that um, I want to strike at the core of this thing. I don't want to prune the tree. I just want to cut it down.
Fair enough.
And so that's why I think I can kind of sound black or white about it, and I don't mean to be. And I think there is room for flexibility, and I really don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And there's a lot of partial truths in some of these other perspectives that can be included. But I just see that there seems to be a much deeper issue, and I think this is what Krishnamurti was getting at too, which is like the fundamental over-identification with ego, mind-based, which I would say is mind-based control of your life, as opposed
Mhm.
to this deeper letting go, and then you can actually live your life from the flow.
So do you think Krishnamurti would have s said something like that, like i- when you let go of ego, it'll be like you just go up and take a walk and there's no conflict.
Yeah, I mean, he pretty much literally said
Okay.
that.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say it a little differently than that personally, but he was very much like, yeah, you just gotta like let go of this ego thing. And he even said, I saw some clip of him saying like, I don't know what it was, maybe I was just born without one.
That's fucking hilarious.
Because he started really young. Uh,
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, I don't know about that. I can't I can't speak to that because I
Yeah.
certainly have one.
So you probably know the question I'm going to ask next. How does one live from that deeper place of trust and attunement without the inner conflict? How does one let go of the ego, right? You pull the roots from the trees so you can live with that on a constant basis.
That is the question I would like to answer with my life's work.
Sure. Well, I guess like for you, how did you begin that? Like, yeah, what was that like for you?
How did I begin that? Well, the first thing that happened, and maybe it's the first thing that needs to happen, is some kind of transcendent experience so that you can have a firsthand experience of an aspect of your consciousness that is that goes beyond yourself, your limited egoic identification. And I had enough of that. I don't know when that started. When I was like, I mean, I started meditating when I was like 18. So between 18 and 22, meditation and psychedelics, I had enough of those glimpses to just to have it confirm what there was already something in me that felt like I knew it. So it was just confirming something I already knew, that there's um, this deeper reality that is wholeness. It's just like the wholeness of everything, the non-separation of everything. And that there's an intelligence there. It's not just that everything's one, it's that everything's one and somehow uh like a living intelligence manifesting as matter. And that's some people would say that that's me taking a direct experience and adding an interpretive flair to it. And fair enough. I can't really, I don't know. I can't prove it to you. You just, it's a, you can only try to experience it for yourself. It's not a mental argument. It's not just an idea that I like. It's like, I just see it. I'm like, oh, there it is. It's as plain as anything else, as me looking at this box of tissues here. And I remember, and sure, also arguments about different experiences on psychedelics and how real are they or whatever. But whatever. To me, in the moment, there's a particular quality of experience where it's like so matter of fact. It's just like, yeah, that tree is that tree. That oneness is that oneness. It's the same thing. And I remember this was, when I was pretty young and I was on LSD or something and I was like sitting on a big boulder and I could just feel what it was like to be that boulder. That it was like coursing with life force energy, even though it's apparently inanimate object. And so anyway, so we need to have some kind of glimpse of it. Once you have a glimpse of it, then I think that starts the whole journey of seeking. And then it's like, okay, well, how do I see that all the time? Because the glimpses seem to come and go. So how do I see, if that is the underlying nature of reality, then how do I see that all the time? And so it starts that whole journey. I feel like maybe there's a different answer that I could give to uh, maybe something that's a little more tangible. But I mean, essentially, let me finish that thought though, the first one, that I'd say, I mean, the most reliable ways of having an experience like that are through regular meditation practice. Um, I'm biased towards Zazen, so I would say through Zazen practice. Mindfulness is fine. I like mindfulness. Or through psychedelics. And I mean, you could try like float tanks too, or you could try breath work. There are other practices and things that can produce those types of glimpses. Um, but let me see, is there a different answer besides that? There might just be like different doorways to a similar thing. So like the other thing that was coming up for me is that also get you could just practice getting extremely in touch with feeling, and it might have the same result. Maybe. I don't know if that'll be a doorway into like oneness, for example, but certainly it would increase attunement. And I want to say that maybe a big part of that is almost, I mean, not almost, everybody that I work with, every client I've ever seen every person I've ever talked to in the world, um, all have the same thing, which is that there's some kind of fundamental assumption that, well, two fundamental assumptions that are connected. One, that there's something wrong with me, like I'm broken in some way, and I need to be fixed. And two, the result of that, my feelings can't be trusted. And that right there is the source of inner conflict, those two things. If you didn't have that, if you didn't think you were fundamentally broken, well, then you would just trust what's happening. You would trust your feelings. You would trust what you do and don't want to do. There would be no inner conflict. You're thinking about it. Maybe there's a challenge.
I think that's true most of the time. I think there's specific, you could have specific inner conflicts.
That makes sense. Yeah. So, yeah, and then the other thing is like, well, I always find this interesting that just through the psychotherapeutic process, it often starts at you need you actually need to question your feelings. You need to doubt them more because, for example, someone will feel like they suck or feel like their personality isn't good enough or they're not good enough in one way or another, and it feels really true. And so if you were to go ahead and trust that feeling, well, that's not that's not going to have good results. So it seems like we actually need to first question everything. And, how do I know which feeling's true and which feeling's not true? Or, yeah, which feeling is related to some truth or not. And then once we get really good at seeing that, then we can actually start to trust feeling in a different way. And not necessarily that it'll tell us exactly the truth about life, but just that it certainly tells us something about ourselves. And so, yeah, so then I can engage with a specific instance of um, motivation or lack thereof, and I can see what are my feelings communicating to me right now. And through that process, kind of like what you were talking about, you can either directly engage with something and eliminate the inner conflict now, or you can move into a deeper acceptance of who you are in this moment, and the conflict will eliminate that way. It's like always that tension, I guess, between when do you change something and when do you accept that it is the way it is right now.
The way I conceptualize it is you accept until you get to the root cause, and then you change it.
You accept until you get to the root cause,
Mhm.
and then you change it. That's interesting. Maybe I agree with that. Accept. I like that. Hold on one second. I'll be back. Yeah, let's see. Is there any last thing? What was the last thing that you said?
I think it was, I was asking you about your process and what that was like to take it out from the root, right? Letting go of the ego, attuning, trusting, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well,
I think.
the last thing you said was um, accepting until you get to the
Oh,
root, and
yeah,
then change it.
yeah, I totally forgot.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and I just want to see if there's anything else to say about that. Acceptance is definitely primary, which I think is what you're getting at there. It's like, and I think however we conceptualize all of this that we've been talking about, that maybe that's the most important point. Because to me, my main gripe with all of the things that I say I have a gripe with is that it's not acceptance based. It's actually the opposite. It's like it's judgment based. And a lot of times it's judgment based, it's shame based, and then it's just like, yeah, and then you just force your way through that. And so that sets up inner conflict, whereas real radical acceptance eliminates inner conflict. And I think maybe in a big way because it acts as the first step. It's like fully accepting all of your experience right now, your emotions, your beliefs, everything that factors into this thing, whatever's happening. And that's the only place that like real, deep, lasting change can take place from, in my opinion. That makes sense?
If you want, if you want more consistent flow-based results, I'd agree.
Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna stop there for now. And I'm sure there's, as always, more to be said about it, but not today. So goodbye, everyone.
Peace.